Hello everybody! I am so excited to do this video. I have planned for this, my little show and tell, to be the final video of Vlogmas all month long, and now I finally get to do it. So, this video, if you have been following me throughout 2019, you've probably heard me saying multiple times that I have been crocheting a lot, that I've been super obsessed with it, I've been making all the things, I've been buying all the yarn, and I have shown some of the stuff that I've been working on sporadically, but today I'm going to show you pretty much everything important that I have made in 2019. I'm probably going to get really in the weeds about doing these projects and the patterns and the yarn and all of that, and if it's not your thing, that's completely fine. I know this is going to only appeal to probably a slice of my viewers, and that's fine. This is a very self-indulgent video. So with that, what am I going to do? I'm going to talk about finished objects, my works in progress, and then a couple of big things that I plan on making in 2020 that I am getting the materials for. The first project I want to show you is the one that has the longest story because I started this in January and I didn't finish it. I didn't save the project until November, and that is this thing. Last Christmas, I was in Colorado visiting family, and we went to a little yarn store out in Colorado, and I saw this yarn. It's Malabrigo Rios yarn. I love the colors. They went so well together. I just bought them. I did not have a project in mind. They were just beautiful and soft and squishy, and I just wanted to play with it, which is where things kind of went wrong. I just sat down and started making what I thought would be a scarf. And I made most of this, everything except for the last two colors on this side, and that's when I ran out of yarn and I realized I hadn't made it long enough. It wasn't long enough to be a scarf. I thought, oh, I'll get some more of this yarn in the right colors, I'll make blocks, I'll attach blocks to the end of the scarf to make it longer. That was a terrible idea. I did not end up doing that. I did manage to find more of the red color, but at that point I was so frustrated, I was so upset with myself because I hadn't planned this. I had cut this yarn into shorter lengths and I thought I would have to rip it all out, and I was so upset. I threw it in a bag, threw it in my closet, and didn't look at it for 10 months. And then back in November, I had started knitting socks, and I wanted to make a pair of worsted weight socks using this free pattern from Susan B. Anderson, and I remembered, oh wait, I have an unused skein of this Malabrigo red color. I'll go find that. And so I dug that out of my closet, and I was looking at this project again and realized, like, this little light bulb moment, I have enough yarn to add 2 more rows to it to make it a little bit wider, and then I can seam it up and make it into a cowl. So that is what I did. I frogged a bunch of my other stuff so I could free up the yarn for it, and it is a big, chunky, extremely warm cowl. And in fact, it's a little bit too big, but I discovered this cool thing. I can turn it into a hood. Yeah. It works so well. I'm not actually a hat person. I don't like wearing hats, even though they're very warm. My hair tends to just push hats off the top of my head, and it's very embarrassing. But this works. I mean, even when I'm wearing it like a hood, it's still big enough to be a scarf or a cowl, and it's so nice. I finished this right before Thanksgiving, actually, and I've been wearing it all the time since then because it works so well. It's so warm. It's very squishy. And my next project is one that I also made with Malabrigo yarn, and I turned it into this shawl, which some of you have probably seen me wearing in past videos. It's quite big. Oop. It's a pretty deep like V-shape or triangular shawl. This is made with Malabrigo Machita yarn, I believe. I don't remember the name of the color. I loved working with this stuff. It's fingering weight, and once again, I'd never worked with a very, very lightweight yarn before, and I was literally making lace, and I'd never done that before. This pattern is called the Virus Shawl. It's a free pattern, and I'm pretty sure it may be the single most popular crochet shawl pattern in existence. I mean, if you're looking at shawls on Instagram or something, you're gonna find a lot of these. A lot of them are also in Turkish. I don't know. Instagram recommends a lot of Turkish crochet to me, even though I have no idea what any of the descriptions are saying. So yeah, it's really easy to do. It's a really easy repeat to memorize, and you can just keep going until it's as big as you want it to be. And even though this is very lacy, it squishes up and it's very, very warm. So this one I did plan. I already knew I wanted to make this. I knew how much yardage I wanted and the type of yarn, and so this just went very well. I made most of it in a week, and it was great. Then there is another shawl that I don't have anymore, but I made a different variation of it, and this is the Lost in Time shawl. It's another very, very popular crochet shawl pattern on Ravelry that is free. I think the designer's name is Joanna Lindahl. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong on that. I think she's Mio Crochet on Instagram though. So I made a Lost in Time shawl, and I don't have it anymore. Maybe I still have a picture of it though. I gave this away to my friend Chris, and I intended on making a larger version with more yarn for myself. And I made that in the Red Heart Unforgettable yarn in the color Echo, which is my favorite color in that line. It's 100% acrylic yarn, but it's really nice. But when I went back to the store to get more of that color, like to make my own version, they didn't have it anymore. So I got a different color, and then I ended up making a rectangular version of this rather than the original triangular version, and that is this. Now, I think the color of this is called Stained Glass or Glass Window or something like that, and it is pretty, but it's the one thing about this I don't really like. It's not really my colors, not really. The purple and pink and paler stuff is not really my thing, but this is the size and dimension of shawls that I really like. I prefer big rectangular shawls that are more like wraps, and that is what this thing is. I didn't come up with this variation. I found somebody's blog post where they took this pattern and converted it into the back and forth rows rather than the increased rows for the triangular version. It was very, very helpful. And yeah, I do think the texture of this pattern is beautiful. It's so pretty and surprisingly easy to do once you have done the repeat a couple of times. It makes a lot of sense. So yeah, maybe someday I will find more of the right color and make the actual triangular version for myself. But so far, even though I'm not very fond of this particular colorway, I wear this shawl all the time. I keep it on the back of my chair in my office, and I wear it a lot. Now I'm doing these chronologically, so I think at this point in the year it was about February or March, and I had discovered 11 Handmade. Her name is Linda Skuja, and she is a Latvian crochet designer. And her most popular pattern is this thing, which is her Goldenrod sweater pattern. So I made that. I made a version first that I don't have anymore. I do have a picture of it. It's this beautiful berry color. I think I made it in Loops and Threads Wool-like. I don't remember the name of the color though. It was so much fun to make. I love the act of doing some stitches in crochet, and this was lots of puff stitches, and just the whole design is beautiful. So my first version I have since given away because it was way too big for me. That's probably my one criticism of this designer's patterns, is that they're not really size inclusive in the way I think they should be. They tend to only come in two sizes, a small size and a large size, and if you don't really fit in those, or if you don't want like a baggy garment, you have to really modify them to make them more fitted. So I made the small size in that first version, and it was so big it was kind of unwearable. So I treated it like a mock-up. It taught me stuff, and then I got rid of it because it was the first ever sweater I'd made, and I was very proud of myself by the end. But doing that, I made some notes about how I would change things to make one that would fit me better, and that is what this gray one is. I sized it down purely by working at a tighter gauge, and that worked perfectly. I still made the size small, I just used a tighter gauge. And this is probably a Yarn Bee baby yarn, like a sport weight or something. Once again, it's acrylic. And this one I made 3/4 length sleeves on them because that's my favorite sleeve length. And this one I can wear, and I do wear, though it is very warm. I mean, acrylic yarn is really warm. It will really trap heat. The problem is that it also traps moisture. It's plastic, it's not breathable like wool is, which is my only problem wearing this particular sweater. It doesn't breathe and I can really feel the moisture building up if I'm too warm. It's unpleasant, yeah, but it's still such a pretty design. I mean, I just think these columns of puff stitches that radiate out from the collar are really, really beautiful. Another pattern that I made by Linda Scuia is her Inmost Cardigan. This is like one of those cocoon shrugs where you essentially make a rectangle and then you bring the ends in together and seam them to make armholes, which I'd never come across that before, and I was really interested in it. So I made this kind of on a whim, spur of the moment, and this is my first version. It's very hard to see because it's black, but I love this thing. I've completely forgotten what yarn it's made out of, but it's probably Yarn Bee or something you can get from Hobby Lobby, and it's a bulky weight yarn. I'll show you the second version in a second, which shows the pattern and the striping a lot better, but you can maybe kind of see it. Yeah, there you go. This version is the right size. It's very squishy and comfortable, and I have worn it quite a bit. But this is one of those projects that I flew through. I had so much joy from just the act of making it. I loved the pattern. So I did it again. And that is this green version. And in this one, you can definitely see the stitch pattern a lot better. This one is modified. I changed it. I used worsted weight yarn instead of bulky weight, which changed the size. And I also packed the puff stitches much more closely together to reduce the gaps. I think I did twice as many puff stitches in each of the rows actually. It's pretty simple modification. And this one, because I changed the gauge I was working at, it changed the dimensions. I did 8 repeats instead of 6, and I made it a rectangle in the other direction, which is why in this one, the stripes run vertically rather than horizontally. And this one, so when I went to get the yarn, I love this yarn in the colorway Dappled Wheat. It's a really pretty, like, variegated green color. I basically bought out the remainder of the stock at my local Hobby Lobby store, and every single skein was from a different dye lot. But I made most of this late at night in the evenings when I had really bad light, and it wasn't until I'd finished it, I was taking pictures of it during the day, that I realized there's some massive differences between the colors and the skeins. You can probably see it, like this is kind of a darker green, this is more faded. Yeah. Not happy about that. You think I would have learned my lesson on, you know, checking dye lots and stuff, but anyway, this was just a superfluous project. I did it purely because I wanted to keep doing the pattern. I had a lot of fun with it. Then I returned to making sweaters. I've been looking for a sweater pattern that would be crochet rather than knitting and would have a denser fabric, and that is when I discovered another of my favorite crochet designers, Deanne Ramsay of Addydae Designs. She is Australian, and I think I've bought like 6 of her patterns, and I've made 3 or 4 of them so far this year, so I'm going to be mentioning Addydae Designs a lot. But I discovered her through one of her sweater patterns. It's called the Blurred Lines sweater. It's not a free pattern, it is a paid pattern, like the Goldenrod sweater. And her patterns are phenomenal. Oh my goodness, I've learned so much from her patterns, and I'm really, really grateful for that. So I decided to do a mock-up because what I wanted to do is to make a really, really nice blurred line sweater with yarn that I got in Ireland, because I knew I was going to be in Ireland, I knew I was going to buy yarn there, and I and some other people from the Stitch and Bitch group were like, we want to do Dublin projects with yarn that we get there. So this was the one that I picked out, and I knew I would need to make a version first to figure it out and really know what size to do and the yardage and everything. So this is my first version, which is very, very wearable. I love wearing this sweater. This is made with probably my favorite acrylic yarn. I've kind of fallen out of love with acrylic yarn, but this one I really like. It is Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek DK, and it's kind of, I think it's more like sport weight in between fingering and DK weight. It worked very, very well for this pattern, which called for fingering weight. And this is my accidental Gryffindor sweater. I'm not actually a Gryffindor, I'm a Ravenclaw, but I just got the colors that looked well together, and I thought you'd be able to see the striping in it really, really nicely. So that was my first version, and then I made a second version, which is this gray one. I finished this when I was actually in Ireland, and it's the same yarn, just different colors from that yarn line, and I did 3 instead of 2. And I also made short sleeves rather than long sleeves. So the one that I am wearing, this is the one that I was doing all of that practice for. This is made with the yarn I got in Ireland. I think that this lighter color is Comora yarns in the colorway At the Bog or In the Bog. Really pretty. I did alternate skeins. If you look at some of it, you can see like the sleeves are a little bit yellower than the bottom portion when it fades out again. But I did alternate skeins on most of it, which is a technique I learned from this particular pattern, and it solved a lot of problems. The darker color is Greta and the Fibers in the color Martinet, and I had just enough yarn. The one thing about this that I wish I had fixed is the color pooling on the upper sleeves in this dark color. I really don't like the look of this type of color pooling, and I wish that I had alternated skeins on the sleeves as well. It would have fixed that problem or made it much less noticeable. I didn't do that because I didn't know if I would have enough yarn. In retrospect, I would have had just enough to do alternations on this portion of the sleeves, but I didn't know that until I had the sleeves done, and I was like, I'm not gonna rip out like 3 days of work and all that difficulty getting the cuffs to be the way I wanted them to be, just no. So I don't think it's super noticeable, especially because it's not actually on the body portion, it's just the sleeves, but yeah. This is mostly wool, and it's the first wool sweater I've ever worn, and the difference in, I mean, it keeps you very warm, but I can really feel how breathable it is. I don't have that moisture collection problem from the acrylic sweaters I made. It's fantastic. I love it so much. Now, the sweater that I'm wearing, this is my second favorite thing I made all year. It's pretty much perfect. But my favorite thing I made this year is my Waroo Shawl. This is another of Addydae Designs patterns, and it is practically perfect in every way. It's very wide. I wear this as a scarf all the time. It is so, so pretty, and everything about it is perfect. I'm just gonna gush here for a minute, guys. So this is made with more of the yarn that I got in Ireland. The first 2 and the 4th color, so this kind of pale color, the orange color, and then the bottom color, which is kind of a mix of brown and gray, those are all Adelong Sock Light yarns. I think the first one is Passé, and then Oasis, and the bottom one is Roa? It's R-O-E-H. I don't know how to pronounce that. So it is an Irish yarn, hand-dyed in Ireland. Absolutely beautiful, so wonderful to work with. And I'd gotten a 3rd color that went with this color scheme, but it turned out to be a different fiber type. It was a little bit finer. It was, when I got to looking at it, it was definitely a different type of yarn. And so I ended up substituting this reddish color, which is almost exactly the same type of yarn. It's another sock yarn, and it is from Third Vault Yarns, which is a London-based indie dyer that had a booth at Worldcon in Dublin. So I got 2 skeins of yarn from her, and this one is, I think it's the Companion 4-ply in the color Mount Doom. And it is also a gorgeous, gorgeous yarn. If I wasn't so scared of the shipping costs, I would buy more yarn from Third Vault as well as from Olan. Just, they're all beautiful colors. They went together so well. It's kind of an accidental color palette. I'm not actually this good at picking colors to go together. It just sort of happened, and it's perfect. So yeah, I'm just gonna rave about this one all the time. This brings us up to October, I think, which is when I started making socks. I made 2 sock patterns by Addydae Designs, the Segue socks, which are my favorite, and the baseline socks, which my version of those don't actually fit. I need to fix that at some point. I don't have them here because they're both in the wash, but they're not particularly important. They're nice for crocheted socks. I wear the Segue ones a lot as like house socks because they're big and warm and all of that. But when I made those socks back in October, it got me thinking about the crochet versus knitted socks debate, which I have not completely made up my mind on this one. I think they have different uses perhaps, but I decided I really wanted to try making knitted socks. Now, I learned to knit over 20 years ago when I was a child, and I hadn't done it in so long. I had to relearn from the beginning. And I tried to relearn knitting a couple of times during 2019 and just quickly gave it up because it wasn't working. I wasn't having fun. But for some reason, this time it clicked. I just spent like a week playing around with knitting and relearning how to knit and purl. It took me 3 days to realize I was wrapping the yarn the wrong way, guys. That was kind of embarrassing. But anyway, I just decided to jump straight into sock knitting rather than something easier like a scarf, and I made socks. So I have 2 of them here to show you. I've actually made 4 pairs of knitted socks, and these are the 2 that I have. Other ones I can't show because they're in the wash. But this green pair are my first ever pair of knitted socks. I don't know anything about the yarn. The yarn came to me like third hand from somebody else's deep stash. I know nothing about it. But it's actually a really cool green color. I love this shade of green, and it's just got enough tonality in it to make it interesting. I've only made 1 sock pattern. It is Susan B. Anderson's How I Make My Socks. It's just a blog post, and it's written for using 3 double-pointed needles, DPNs, which is what I prefer to use. But yeah, this one I made exactly per the instructions, and it's 64 stitches. I used size 2 needles, and I got hair on it. My hair goes everywhere. And they're a little bit loose, but they still fit. They don't like fall down, and I really enjoy wearing them. And then I did that same pattern again, but I mixed it up with this second pair. And these I sized correctly. I still did 64 stitches, but I went down to size 1 needles, and that was perfect. It's the perfect size for me. Just really, really great. You can probably tell this pair of socks is made out of leftover yarn from my Waroo Shawl. I've got that Mount Doom color from Third Vault Yarns as the contrast color, and then the Passé color from Olan. And this does have a bit of texturing on it. You can maybe see that. I didn't do it super well. This is the texture pattern from the Everyday Hermione socks, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's basically like knit 3 purl, knit 3 purl, and it is okay. I think it's a bit wonky because I'm not very good at maintaining the right tension when I switch from knitting to purling and then back. But now that I've worn them and that they've been washed a couple of times, it actually looks a bit better. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with these socks. I think they came out really pretty, and I figured out how to do the contrast color on my own, and I didn't completely botch it. Those are all of the finished objects I wanted to share, and next I have 2 whips or works in progress. This first one you've probably seen if you have tuned in for any of these Stitch and Bitch live shows in 2019, because it is my reading tracker project. This is my book blanket. It's really hard to show because it's a twin-sized Afghan. It's almost full-size now. So I took a picture of it and I'll insert it here so you can see it at its full length. I still have about 20 books to add to this, so it's going to be a little bit longer than I had planned. I could have made it wider, but at the time when I was estimating how many rows it would have, I came close with my estimate, but not quite. So every row is 2 books. The red color is science fiction. The kind of gold color is fantasy. The black is nonfiction. The, is that kind of a purple color? I forget the actual name of it is, it's the wine color. That is collections or anthologies. The cream is middle grade or young adult. This weird color, which is kind of a brownish lavender, I think it's actually called brownie. That's miscellaneous, which in 2019, miscellaneous was mostly romance novels and poetry collections. And then there is kind of a yellow mustard color, which is, oh, where'd it go? Oh, it's coming undone. Here we go. Okay, the yellow mustard color is classics, and the kind of terracotta pinkish color is drama, which is Shakespeare plays, because that's the only drama I read this year. And I think that's all the colors actually. And it's very interesting if you look at the wide picture of this. My year started out very dominated by red, lots of science fiction. But like the last 2-3 months of the year, there's a lot of black because of nonfiction and nonfiction November and everything. And I think it just came together a lot better than I thought it was going to. The color scheme isn't perfect, but it's sort of cohesive. I think it works pretty well, you know? It's been really fun to work on it throughout the year and just see this visual representation of my reading throughout the year. And it's really only for novels and stuff. I didn't include comics and I didn't include novellas. My other whip is a bit difficult to see. I've decided I want to try knitting a sweater in 2020, and I have started on it. This is a portion of the yoke. This pattern is the brick sweater, free on Ravelry, and I chose it because it looked simple, pretty quick to make. It's made with worsted weight, so it will knit up relatively quickly. And it's a raglan style sweater, which I've never worn one of those before. So yeah, I did this test. I had a small skein of this yarn, which is the Blue Sky Fibers wool stock in the color cast iron. So I just used up a small skein to do a test. This is the medium size. I was struggling with the sizing in the pattern to figure out, it doesn't indicate whether it's made for positive or negative ease, and it doesn't tell you what the actual measurements are. It just says, pick a size based on your bust. I'm like, that doesn't work very well if you have really weird measurements. So I made the medium size. I think I'm like 6 rows from dividing for the sleeves, and I'm pretty sure that this will be the right size for me. So yeah, this will get ripped out. I plan on starting over again. I am waiting for the rest of the yarn and some new needles to be delivered to me. I basically need more sweaters, especially sweaters in neutral colors, black, gray, maybe some taupe or cream, things that I can wear with a lot of accessories of different colors and stuff. This dark gray one will be a replacement for a sweater that I am probably going to get rid of because it's really beat up. It's really beat up. So those are my whips. So now moving on to my planned projects in 2020. Get all of my swatches out of my bag. I have been a good crocheter, and I have been actually swatching yarn for this next project. I am going to make the Sashiko Happy Coat. This is designed by Susan Walsh of Peppergoose Designs. She's another Australian crochet designer. I'll try to put a picture of this coat in here. It is gorgeous. I love the shape of it. I love the Sashiko style embroidery. I am going to make this coat, guys, and I've ordered the yarn for it. I had a bit of a journey with this, trying to find the right yarn. because it's designed with Scapious Our Tribe yarn, and specifically this color, which is the Happy in Red color. I'm not sure how it's showing up on camera here. It looks pretty red, but I ordered a skein of this to see it in person because I wanted to check how red it actually was. And when it is crocheted up and everything, I made a test swatch. It is actually really shifted towards pink. I'd say when you even out all that variegation, it is more pink than red, and it is not the color that I would wear. It's beautiful. Oh man, I love the designer's version of this in this particular color. It's just so, so beautiful, but it is not what I would love to wear. So I have been auditioning other yarn types and stuff to find one that would work, that I could reach the right gauge with, and that would be the right color. And I have a winner. I ordered the rest of this yarn yesterday, in fact, because it was on sale. And that is this color. So the Our Tribe yarn is a fingering weight, and you hold it double in the pattern. And I actually didn't reach gauge in my test swatch, which was interesting. I even went up a hook size before I started and I didn't reach gauge. But this color, this yarn is the Knit Picks Galileo Sport Weight yarn, which is actually a DK weight. So in this swatch, I hit gauge almost perfectly and I held it double. So yeah, it's a different type of yarn. The Scapious Our Tribe yarn is a single ply and it's fuzzier. This Galileo yarn is like a 2-ply. It's a pretty tightly done ply. It doesn't really come undone, but it has a shinier, sleeker appearance. So that does change the way the fabric looks. It still drapes very well, especially after blocking. Blocking is magical. So yeah, I was so happy with this swatch, I went ahead and I bought the rest of the yarn. But this right here, this is my favorite color. Dark, almost heart's blood red. This is the color Valentine, if I didn't say that before. It is so beautiful. This is my color. Then, like I mentioned before, I'm going to make another of Addydae designed sweater patterns. I'm going to make the Adelong sweater, and this one is made in DK weight, and it has this really cool like texturing, like kind of ridged texturing along the yoke and along the sleeves. The construction of it looks very different. It's still kind of like a top-down sweater, but you do the yoke and the sleeves at the same time. Fascinating. So I wanted to make this one in my favorite red color to replace a red sweater that it's too small for me now. So I also was auditioning yarn for it, and I found the perfect thing on the first try, and that is this. This is Knit Picks Swish DK in the color Garnet Heather. So it isn't a pure red, it does have that darker red heathering in it. I don't know if it really shows up on camera or not. And since it's DK weight, you know, it's heavier weight than fingering, it'll probably work up really quickly if I figure out the pattern pretty quickly, which I probably will because it's such a well-written pattern like the others. And the last project that I am going to make, that I know I'm going to make in 2020, I have all the yarn for, so have a little bit of a yarn haul to show you today. So I'm going to make the Ziggy Interrupted Shawl by Cherry Heart. I've forgotten her name, and that's embarrassing, but she is Cherry Heart on Ravelry. She also has a podcast here on YouTube called Cherry Heart. And so this pattern is actually a scarf. It's like a zigzag pattern, but it's interrupted with these sections of stripes that are pieced with squares. Really cool. And I just think the color work that some people have done with this is really inspiring. I wanted to do my own version, but I plan on making it bigger. It is originally a scarf pattern, so I'm going to make it much wider so I can make that kind of rectangular shawl that I enjoy the most. So I got more colors and more yarn because I think I'm going to make a much larger version. It calls for 5 colors and I have 7. So I began collecting yarn for this from a YouTube channel. These 3 colors which are from Chemknits. Chemknits Tutorials is a YouTube channel where Rebecca, that's her name, she dyes a lot of yarn, and I've become addicted to watching her videos this year. And she sells most of the yarn that she dyes on her channel in her Etsy shop. So I got these 3 colors from her shop. So they don't have colorway names, I don't think. These are dyed on the Knit Picks Hawthorn base. So I went looking for more colors on this base so that they would all match. So I started with these, and I am not good at coming up with color palettes. So funny story, I was sitting in yoga one day and I had a brainwave because my yoga studio moved over the summer, and it's now in a building that was formerly an abbey, formerly a church. And on 2 of the walls in the big room where we have yoga, there are these beautiful stained glass windows. And I realized that the 3 colors I already had were in the windows, as well as a bunch of other colors that went very well. So I just decided to go find yarn in the colors from the stained glass window, and it worked very well. So I got 2 more colors from Knit Picks on their Hawthorn base. This purple color, it's so pretty. It has lots of purple, a little bit of rose in it, and I think a little bit of brown as well. And the tag doesn't say the name for some reason, but oh no, it does. Eugene. It does say that on there. Very pretty. And then I got this, which looks black. In person, it looks more like a very dark gray with maybe some brown in it. This one is called Grant's Pass, and I thought it was gonna be a really dark brown. It is definitely more gray. It still works, so like I said, I'm not mad. It'll still work in my color palette. I just needed that really super dark color that would match anything brown. And then I stumbled across 2 completely different yarn colors. These are the Woolen Rabbit, and so the golden color is called Midas Touch. I was so worried that this color wouldn't work because I didn't bring the other yarn colors with me when I was in the store looking for things. I decided to hedge my bets and get a second color that I thought might also work. And this one is called Morning Dove, and I got this one because it kind of plays off of the purples in the Eugene color. And it's not this Hawthorn base from Knit Picks, it's something different, but it is essentially a sport weight yarn like the others are. But I noticed that the twist, like the high twist quality of this and the yardage matched, so I was so happy I found these, and this kind of completed the color palette I was going for, and I'm itching to get started on it. It's gonna be a toss-up on whether I devote all my time to the Ziggy Interrupted Shawl or my brick sweater as soon as I get my needles, so yeah. That's the thing with me. I don't make small projects. I mean, I make socks now, but everything else is just huge and takes so much yarn and so much time, and I guess that's just sort of my style. So yeah. Those are all the things that I crocheted this year. Those are some of the socks I knitted, and those are my plans for the future. I don't think I'm going to be slowing down anytime soon, which means if I want to keep my reading pace up, I better go find a couple of audiobooks. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for watching this, whether it was your thing or not. I've had a great time during Vlogmas this year. It's kind of freeing to kind of, you know, focus on quantity over quality, and it kind of gives me that freedom to make videos on things that I usually wouldn't because it's not my usual content and all of that, but this was so much fun to do. So yes, it is Christmas Eve when you're possibly watching this. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a wonderful holiday. If you do not celebrate Christmas, I hope you still enjoy this time of the year and spend it with family and friends and loved ones. I am done for 2019. I'll be back with my next video in January when I will do all of my end of the year videos. But for right now, I am going to decompress, get away from the internet, and focus on enjoying the holiday and spending time with my family and such. So thank you guys for a wonderful 2019. There were some parts of this year that were really, really crushing with disappointment, but I've still had a lot of fun here, and like the high points of my year have just been doing this, reading, making videos, talking to friends. I've really, really needed that this year, so thank you. And until next time, bye.